Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to another edition of Dome and Domer. My name is Mike Brammer. Joining me tonight, Ed Jordanek. Also joining us from ndnation.com, Mike Coffey.
And I'm the one who doesn't have ice cream.
Yeah, there you go.
I eat pie when I'm really upset.
It's going to be that kind of show.
I started eating
We're all
pie.
diving into the comfort food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to start with this because I do kind of think this is fascinating. It's the good and bad of college football. The great thing about college football is what happened Saturday night. If you're a fan of college football, forget about what happened to Fighting Irish, but just in terms of the game itself, the atmosphere, the hype, everything, it's just a phenomenal game, right? But what then happens is all of the commentary after the game, and that's where things just go kind of crazy. And the point I would make is
that's
that
like at all. I have no idea what that's like.
Here's a perfect example. So the narrative, that night and into the next morning, the next day, is, oh my God, Kyle McCord is everything Ohio State was hoping he'd be. And this is a guy that is the guy, according to Joel Klatt or a couple of the guys I was watching. Anyways, the point being is that all of a sudden this guy's just God's gift to Ohio State based on the game that he had, which ended in him in the final drive. All credit to him, no doubt about it. However, there's 3 plays that happened in that last 4 minutes that if any one of those plays happened to go our way, it's a completely different narrative, and it's the exact opposite. And I know that the one that everybody's going to point to is the missed interception by DJ Brown, because if he does catch that, completely different narrative, like completely different. And all it took is that one little play that didn't happen, that then the next day the whole narrative changes. But obviously, and I'll start with you, Coffee, because I know you're probably burning, but I mean, in the last 4 minutes, there were several things we didn't execute, even though it was right there in front of us. You had the mishap with the handoff in the backfield. I don't even know what to make of that. I tried to watch it, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly happened there. Did Hardman pull it himself because he saw that the play was being blown up and thought maybe I should pull it on my own and get around the end? Or was that? I don't think it was a design play.
I think he pulled it maybe because he saw, like you say, he saw the play was being blown up, and I think he just wanted to avoid the turnover, figuring I'm just gonna this is going south quickly. I'm gonna take the ball, keep the ball in my own hands. If I can get away from this guy, fine, but I'm not going to be the one that puts it on the ground. So, and not that he thought the running back would, but I think he just in the moment said it's not safe to hand this ball off.
It looked to me like Love screwed up.
What's that?
A little bit. There was some sort of miscommunication.
Oh, possibly.
Yeah. But Ed, on the next play, or not the next play, but on that screen pass, okay. Yeah. when you looked at the replay,
before we get to the next play, neither of those running backs should have been in the game. There should have been 3 tight ends in the game, and Estime should have been in the game, and they should have run the ball straight up their asses because they were beating Ohio State at the point of attack.
Yeah,
and it was ridiculous.
Late in the 4th quarter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, they just got 2 first downs. I mean, there were 2 first downs prior to that.
What's the point of having, Jerome Bettis 2.0 if he's not on the field for the last 3 plays of the, that you have the ball? It makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, now to in defense of that, we were running the football no matter who was in the backfield. And that's a credit to the guys that we got, but we moved the football the entire night. I mean, we had 175 yards, so something was going right. But I get the point you're saying. But
he had a 12-yard carry, and then he came off the field and never came back on.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird. A little bit. He had 14 carries, and that's about what he's been having every single game.
Well, yeah, because he's played 3 quarters the other games. I mean,
True. Some of that. True.
I thought it was very interesting. Now, listen. Granted, I mean, he got about 9 yards and 8 carries to start the game, but to me, it looked like a it looked like a very sort of game plan that we're familiar with, you know, where they did not abandon the run. They beat them. They beat them up. They beat them up. They beat them up, or they tried to beat them up, and they weren't always successful. But if their yards per carry was, I wouldn't be surprised if their yards per carry was, 3.9 in the first half and 5.9 in the second half.
Well, I think at the end of the game, it was like over 5.
Right. So maybe it was like 6.9 in the second half.
Yeah, it must have been because it was over 5, I'm pretty sure. So, but again, going back to the screenplay, if Hartman executes that, it might have been a touchdown. Forget about the first down. It might have been a touchdown. There were.
Well, I looked at that again, and I'm not so sure of that. I mean, there was another.
It was a first down for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was, their linebackers are pretty fast. There was an Ohio State guy out there. I don't know if he could have knocked. Who was the running back receiver? Was it Payne or who was it?
No, I think it was Love again, wasn't it?
Or I think it was Price. Actually, no, it was.
It was Price. You're right. It was Jadarian Price. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's got good hands? Who's got great hands?
Yeah, but I mean, there were linemen in front of him, but there was a linebacker, I think, coming from.
There was a linebacker out there, but I want to say it was at least 3-on-2 or.
Well, I didn't think that the two blockers for Notre Dame, the two offensive linemen, were in good position. They were in good position to get guys downfield, but I didn't think they were in very good position to get the guy that was coming kind of from the line of scrimmage. Or I think it was one of the blitzers that kind of veered off to Price when he saw that it was a screen pass, because you remember they were kind of bringing the house on that play.
They were, but it was a short. I mean, he short armed it. I mean, he clearly Price was there.
It was not.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what he didn't execute.
Right, but if you look at a couple of replays, I mean, it would have been a pretty damn good throw to hit the guy in stride. I mean, it was not an easy pass considering what was in front of him. I mean, it would have been a teardrop over that guy, who's a pretty big guy, to get it to Price. And there wouldn't have been much room between Price and the sidelines if he caught it in stride. And I'm just saying, I hope you're right. I mean, not I hope you're right. I mean, I think it's very hard to say. But I mean,
I guess to the original point, I mean, the game, if he makes that first down, the game's over. That would have ended the game.
Let's put it this way. At the very least, we needed him to catch the ball and stay in bounds.
Yeah, right.
Even if it was
force a timeout, right?
Even
exactly.
If it was a 1-yard loss, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And let's also remember both the guy who got the sack on the first down and the guy who blew up the screen pass play. The kid was a number 2 ranked recruit in his class, the number 1 linebacker or the number 1 lineman in California or something like that. I mean, this was a 5-star plus kid. Those kids are going to make those kind of plays, and I mean, good on him for making that, for making both those stops and really making a huge difference in the game. That's why you recruit kids like that.
Were they on the right hash when they ran that play?
Yeah, they were.
I want to say they were.
Yeah,
they were.
Because I mean,
So then you're playing 3 defenders with with the sideline. Well, it's another defender.
And you can make an argument there to follow up on Mike's point that you run that play, but not on the side of the field that guy's on.
No.
Well, it's not like there's bad people on the other side.
No,
yeah,
a little more room to operate.
Yeah, you got a little bit more room to operate, and you've got, I mean, but again, it's, I don't know enough about, the looks and what Hartman saw and et cetera, but I would have, and it's very possible if they would have ran Estime on that play, because they were kind of bringing the house, that it might have been stopped for very little gain. But it also is a play where if you just pick off one of the guys that's hitting those gaps,
then you break it.
He could spring for a really big gain. So
well, look at I mean, obviously there's more to the story here all the way up to the end of the game. However, the point is there were at least 3 opportunities where the entire narrative changes if any of those 3 plays go. And I kind of point to the interception as the big one, that because it just barely went through his hands. I mean, his hands were there. I think he just didn't think the ball was thrown as hard as it was, and he didn't squeeze it like he should have, and it went right through his hands.
Somebody told me today that it looked like he was already looking down the field. Is that true, or did he?
Oh, I mean, he jumped it. He jumped it perfectly. He was.
No, I mean, in other words, he didn't look the ball into his hands. He was.
Yeah, he did not. He did not look the ball into his hands. I think he thought he had it and was going to run. I mean, there was nobody near him. He was forward momentum, but he jumped it perfectly. I mean, he literally perfectly timed it. It was a little bit high, but again, look, those are the moments where you got to make that play. You just got to.
Yeah.
You can't drop that ball. It's just not. You just can't. Now,
I'm sure he and Pete Bursich are going to be meeting in a bar someday somewhere.
Exactly.
And commiserating with each other.
Yeah, for those of us of a certain
God love both those guys. So
some serious PTSD for those of us of a certain age when we saw that, because it was sort of like
yeah, it was all over again. You kind of knew it. Well, I was watching one of the, and I because I usually don't watch these podcasters, but this game just kind of put me into another level. So I started watching multiple ones just to see, and they had it might have been McAfee, it might have been Pat McAfee's show, but they had a defensive back from the NFL as a guest, and the point McAfee was making was the football gods come into play at that point. And the defensive back that was, I don't even know who it was, but the point he was making is when you're another player on the defense and you see that happen, it's deflating.
Sure.
Because it's like, oh man, dude, come on, man. Like, come on.
We could have been going home. Right.
Yeah, we could have been walking this off. So it does definitely have that kind of negative impact on the rest of the series because of the missed opportunity. Because you start to hang your head. You start to be like, oh God, man, now what?
Right.
So
to me, that's another reason why, because in other words, you've got to snap your. I think to me, as a coach, when you see something like that happen, if you're right, if your players could possibly be a little bit deflated or hang your head, then immediately you have to make a call that sort of gets them back in an aggressive mindset.
Yes, exactly.
In other words, instead of dropping 8, you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to bring an extra rusher, or I'm going to send, I'm going to take a chance that McCord isn't going to get very far, so I'm going to abandon the spy and I'm just going to send Bertrand after him, or just something to get them on their toes again real quick, as opposed to sort of laying back and thinking about.
You got to attack. You got to put yourself in attack mode is what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to talk about this. Just not that the whole world hasn't already talked about this, but is there any kind of concern that 10-man situation lingers longer than we kind of hope and has a negative impact on the intangibles of the game against Duke on Saturday? Our players.
I think Freeman handled it the right way. He stepped up and he took responsibility. He said, this is on me, this is on the coaches. We did not put the players in a position to succeed. I think that Marcus Freeman has built up a lot of goodwill, not only with the fans, but with his players also. And everyone involved realized this was a big screw up. And I think Freeman's willingness to take granted, the buck does stop on his desk. So the fact that he's willing to take responsibility, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or whatever, I think if I were a player, that would go a long way with me. Because notice that we have no idea who the player was who was supposed to be out there. Now, what do you think the chances are with his predecessor that the name would have snuck out somehow during a press conference or something? I think Freeman being willing to take full responsibility for it, as he should, is, I think, a big positive. And if I were a player, I would see that and say, my coach has my back. I'm going to go have his.
I mean, it was a defensive lineman that wasn't in there, but was in the Tennessee game. In the Tennessee State game, was it also a defensive lineman that wasn't on there? I hate to find the answer to that. But anyways.
Well, I mean, I'd heard that like, Botello misheard the call, and he thought that he wasn't supposed to be out there because Ohio State was in kind of a 12 package, and he knows he doesn't go on the field for those. But it was actually, a different thing. But, like, who knows? I mean, like, the point is that I just think that's one of these situations where that is not on the players. Yes, you'd like to think that a Bertrand or a Kaiser, if they're on the field, are heads up enough to see that there's only 10 guys, there's nobody in that gap, and they cross the line of scrimmage and make contact in order to get the guy on the field, or they shift somebody, or they move some, whatever they do something to try.
Yeah, but even that I think is asking a lot.
That, right? No,
but,
I think it's asking. I think it's asking a lot. But to me, what's absolutely inexcusable is coming out of a timeout without the right person on the field. I mean, that especially if you're making two calls. Now, to Freeman's credit, he didn't. I don't know if people picked up on it, but he basically said, or maybe I heard this somewhere, so maybe he didn't say it. But my understanding is that they were going to go with the base defense, and he changed it at the last minute or last second, and that was part of the confusion. So if that's true, again, it's to me, this is a coaching failure not to have the right players on the field. And the thing is that really bugs me is people that I was sitting at, as soon as 19 comes run off of their sidelines onto the field.
Oh, you knew it was going to him. Everybody did.
We knew
everybody knew it was going to him.
Right, that they were going to try and jam it in. They only needed a yard or a half yard. I mean, it was just that's what they were going to do. And to give them credit, they didn't wuss out like they did before on fourth down.
Right.
When they ran a jet sweep or whatever they did. So we just knew it, and so that's what makes it so damn frustrating. Is that who knows? I mean, look how close it was without a guy there.
Without a guy there, we still almost got him. You just wonder. Look, I think what's real obvious that everybody understands is that right now we competed in a game that we normally are nowhere near that in the fourth quarter with a minute to go. There was not a single Brian Kelly team that was anywhere near Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. Well, I mean, you could say the 2020 game, Clemson. But my point is that in these type games where it's elite teams, the elites, we're not in the game, and we haven't been. And we were in the game and owned it, and then just let it get away from us.
Well, I can to build on that. Something that Doug Farmer at NBC wrote, I think today. He said previous game, like over the last couple of years, when we would play tough teams, like as you pointed out, Alabama or Clemson at full strength, or Georgia, which is the example he used, we would want the team to be in a position that we hoped we could win.
Yeah.
Saturday, we were in a position to win. There wasn't a hoping about it. We went toe-to-toe with Ohio State, and we're in a position in the last minute of the game to win. And that in and of itself indicates the improvement, one of the improvements that Marcus Freeman has run.
I mean, I told somebody you can make the argument that was Marcus Freeman's best and worst game at the same time.
Because
it was a team that was prepared. It was a team that looked like athletically the equal to the opponent. I thought the game plan was sound. Obviously, the defense, I think it's like 2018 or 2019 since Ohio State scored 17 points or less. So I mean, there's a lot there. But that's what makes it so frustrating.
They came back from 10 down in the second half. I mean, they're down 10-0, and put two drives together and ran it. Didn't even air it out.
Right.
Just said, hey, we're going back to what we do well, and we're just going to run it right down their throat. I don't know.
We didn't really answer your question, though, about the lingering 10 men thing. And I think that is something that will, that is kind of part of Notre Dame history now. Like nobody's going to forget that for a long.
This is the 10-man game. Yeah.
And if if they lay an egg on Saturday, it's going to be even worse. But I mean, I feel like they will. I just kind of feel like they will win convincingly on Saturday. I don't know why I feel that way.
I do too. I don't know. I hope it's not me hoping that, but I kind of feel the same way. And I think it's only because if Marcus Freeman is true to what he said since day one, that all we're trying to do is achieve the very highest level we're capable of achieving as a team. That there is no, we can't do any better than what's the best of the best for us. And that's what we shoot for on a daily basis. And if they are doing that on a play-by-play basis, they should beat Duke pretty well. I mean, Duke is not Notre Dame. They're good, but they can't match us. They don't have two lockdown corners like we got. They don't have running backs like we got. They don't have an offensive line like we got, and they don't have Sam Hartman. They got a good quarterback. He's not bad.
Yeah.
He might even be better in McCoy. You can maybe possibly make that argument, but I just don't see them staying with us if we're not making mistakes. If we're executing, it's hard to imagine that we can't beat Duke in that scenario.
I
don't
think
know.
It's probably good that we're going on the road against a good team.
Yeah.
And that's the way to get your guys' attention. Of all the distractions that we had last week with game day and all that stuff, Duke has to deal with this week. That is definitely something that they're not used to. They are not used to They are not used to playing in front of a full stadium, and they are definitely not used to having microphones shoved in their faces all week by every press outlet in North Carolina. Not to mention, Reese Davis and Desmond Howard and Pat McAfee and the whole thing. So, I think my sense is that the moment will be a little too big for Duke, and that will play into our hands a little bit. I hope I'm right about that. But the task doesn't get much easier the next weekend. I haven't watched much of Louisville, but we know Braum is
they got some athletes. I watched one of their games.
Yeah.
They definitely have some athletes.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it.
They always do. Yeah.
A little undisciplined, but man, they definitely got some athletes.
He kind of put together. He probably utilized the portal.
I gotta believe he did.
Anybody. Yeah. Yeah.
How did they get so good so quickly like that? I mean, they had to have.
Big upgrade.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that the key will be how, do we turn the ball over? Because if we get sloppy in the littlest bit, that's where that mindset kicks in, and you're kind of doing the same thing again. Like, oh man, the guy next to me can't make a play. This is gonna suck. Things I don't anticipate that. I really don't. I have a strong sense that this team is a lot better than we think. And I think they proved it on Saturday night. I think it just fell apart on us in the worst way possible in a matter of.
What do you guys feel about the issue of, in the first quarter, whatever, the first drive? I mean, there's an argument to be made, and I think it could be a valid one, that, because of the way the college game is changing a little bit, with the first down clock, running, et cetera, that there's, Notre Dame only had 7 possessions, if you don't count like the kneel downs.
And one in the first quarter.
Right. So, so you can make an argument that, you send the field goal kicker out there on 4th and 1 for a 35-yard field goal.
That's what I wanted to do. I had people tell me though that that's not right. So, in my living room, we got into an argument. I'm like, you take the 3 points, you're at home. And they're like, no. The whatever it is that everybody goes by, the analytics.
Says,
the analytics say you always go for it 4th and 1 or less because of the point spread. And I don't know. I think you've got to be consistent. And it sounds like Freeman is like, no way, man. Anytime it's 4th and 1 or less, we're going for it 100% of the time.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Now, this has cost us a couple times. It cost us last year.
I mean, maybe the story here is that, they talked about changing holders. I mean, maybe the story here is, we're like I said last week, we're infatuated with this kicker because he's got the strongest leg we've had in years, but he's 2 for 7.
Yeah. Or 3 for 7.
I mean, granted, 3 for 7. I mean, granted, some of them have been, they've been a lot of long kicks, but it's not like he's shown that he's automatic.
No.
From 40 and in.
No. But, on the holder, though, if you do look at that, he didn't spin the laces perfectly outward, which will cause the ball to move a little bit when you do that. Yeah. It definitely does. So I'm not going to blame him, but when you have that powerful a leg, it makes the margin of error even smaller because your leg is so powerful, accentuates this, that miss,
Well, to
especially
me, I
the hook.
relate it to golf. This is not a guy who's had pressure situations before, and I think like a golf swing, when you're excited, when the adrenaline's rushing a little
Yeah,
bit,
you over pull.
you're right. You tend to get a little quick, and when
Yep.
you get a little quick, that's when you pull the ball.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't come down to field goals against Duke. But I also don't think that you're going to see us come out and then all of a sudden just, have 5 possessions in a row where we score 5 touchdowns. I don't see that happening. Duke's a very well coached football team. They got guys that can play. It's not like they're empty like Duke normally is. You don't beat Clemson the way that they did with a bunch of inferior athletes. I mean,
True,
to a
but that
certain
game
extent, they're
was a
legit.
little, I mean, statistically, Clemson pounded on them,
They did pound them.
but
They turned it up.
but
Yeah, I get it.
there were a couple of weird flukes in
Definitely.
there. I mean, and again, I don't want to take it, like you said, they've got decent athletes, and Elko's is a good coach.
It's a great
So
coach.
I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk on Saturday, but I mean, I look at the speed and the ability that the players on Ohio State have, and then I look at Duke and say, Duke ain't no Ohio State. We just held Ohio State to 10 points
Yeah.
for the vast majority of a game. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, to me, this is the kind of game where there's no reason why, if you don't sort of, like you said, Mike, avoid the mistakes, that, by the middle of the third quarter, we should be getting 6-7 yards of carry. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Yep.
that we should be able to manhandle them up front, after an hour or two. And that should put the game away. At least, in theory, that's how it should work, I think.
I agree.
I think there's going to be a story coming out of this game. That's for sure. Because I think all eyes are on Marcus Freeman and the staff. How do they respond to this? How do they, almost like it's them now that's got to show up, because of the last play.
Mhm.
I will say that I wish that they would have had a PR person tell him, like, okay, you very well may have done it, but you don't need to share with the media that now you have a signal for 10 men on the field.
Yeah, that kind of, I was,
as if it's going to happen again.
I didn't see it. I was kind of hoping he was being sarcastic. I didn't actually see him actually talk about it. So I was hoping he was being sarcastic about it.
Yeah, well, I don't think he was. And that's kind of one of those that, like, okay, you just got to keep that to yourself, even if you do have that going forward, which probably makes sense, it's but I mean, it's such a crazy, unique situation where you're going to signal some guy to go into the neutral zone and touch one of their offensive linemen.
That's so hard to, yeah.
I mean, so it just kind of makes it, you just, he was the one that says, listen, we got to move on. We got to, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, that was better left unsaid.
No, I agree.
I mean, I'm willing to offer myself for every home game this moving forward that I will count every player on every snap of the ball, and I promise to call down to the sidelines if there's not 11 guys. I mean, don't you have a grad assistant doing this? I mean, this is fine to me. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but geez, Louise, man.
In 2023 college football, you could probably make $78,000 a year just with doing that job. You could probably be a special assistant to the assistant coordinator, and you could make a living wage on that, doing that.
Exactly.
We had a meme on the board saying, hey, there's going to be a new analyst at the Goog on Wednesday, and you open it up and it's count on count. Like,
Yeah, nice.
Oh gosh.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, let's hope that we can kind of put this behind us. I think a big win at Duke will do that. This team needs to get back on solid ground, solid footing, and hopefully they're having a hell of a week. Like this is you got to take advantage of these opportunities. I mean, Holtz was a master at this, man. You knew what was coming Monday at practice when things went wrong on Saturday. I mean, it was just no doubt about it. So I think that the whole entire team, this is an opportunity for them to kind of band together. You know what I mean? Like now, instead of Ryan Day claiming it's Ohio against the world, it's Notre Dame against the world. And I think that they're going to have to come together as a team, and they got to dig deep and right themselves, because it is going to be. There's 4 games in a row that, man, there's no letting up. I mean, that's a tough run what they're faced with the next 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Not
I
an
mean,
easy one.
I do think it's a pretty good sign and pretty ironic that a month ago, we're defining its success as 10-2 in a New Year's Six game, and now we're like hacked off that we damaged our playoff chances. So
Right.
I mean, that in itself is not a bad development. And I do think that again, you gotta, now when you lose in college football, which is what makes the game so great, you gotta rely on others.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
now,
Less
right.
so next year, but
yeah, and
Other games become interesting that you would never pay attention to.
right, and it sucks. Clemson should have done us a favor and won,
Yeah.
and choked, and now Ohio State has to run the table and beat Michigan for the first time in several
Yeah,
years.
I will
So,
tell you that I am a little bit nervous about the rest of the season, because I could eat, and I hate to say this, but I'm not. I could easily see Ohio State losing to Penn State. I even think they might struggle
sure.
against Purdue a little bit. You could have that hangover before the game. You're always looking ahead. You can have a bad game against Purdue, but I just don't see Ohio State beating Penn State and then beating at Michigan. I just don't see it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we got to remember, Ohio State should have beat Georgia last year,
should
right?
have, yeah, yep.
So
But they had C.J. Stroud. I mean, you had a top
no,
quality elite.
exactly. But Saturday's game, definitely was a confidence builder for McCord. I mean, remember there
Yeah,
was a competition, and now they have their
yep,
quarterback. They
yep,
have their quarterback. He won a big game on the road, and I think that in the development of a quarterback, winning a big game on the road is a pretty big step, right? It's
yep.
something that we saw Book come in and do it. I think at North Carolina. We saw Kaiser, come in and do it at Virginia. Those things are kind of like milestones in the life of a college quarterback. Um, so, I would expect, I would not be surprised if, both Notre Dame and Ohio State are better teams 5 weeks from now.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's very possible. Yeah, very possible. They're 2 good teams, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's hope that we end up being the better team, but we'll find
Yeah.
out here. We
Yeah.
got plenty of opportunity to show it, that's for sure. I do want to. The last point I was going to make is I have to say I was really impressed with how Hartman hung in the pocket and progressed through his reads. I think there was at least 2, maybe 3 times where he hit his 4th read.
Yeah.
And that throw over the middle where he was bouncing on his feet, left, right, middle, and then threw it. I mean, that was a thing of beauty, and that's something we have not had in a long time at Notre Dame. Somebody that has the ability to see the field like that, and that does make a difference. I mean, that I thought was huge.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, if it wasn't for that Ricky Pearsall guy, I think, Evans would have had the catch of the year. I mean, that was
yeah,
that was a grab that I've just I still marvel at. I've watched it a couple
yeah,
of times now, and it's really something. And I think Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated made a good point. You would think after the last year, what we've seen, that on those 4th and shorts, that Evans would have taken the snap and not Hartman for a sneak.
yeah.
But his point was that after the concussion protocol, that maybe that's why that didn't happen, that they didn't want him
That's a
in
good.
there,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Point.
Yeah,
doing that. So,
yeah.
so these little things, that's what made this such a good game, is there were so many little things that you could claim the game hinged on, and you wouldn't be wrong.
Right.
Almost every play had some bigger implications, or could have led to something else, to a different outcome. So, and unfortunately for Notre Dame, there were a lot of those.
Yeah, it added up.
Yeah.
All right, Coffee. I'll start with you. What's your prediction?
Well, I don't see Duke's defense being close to as formidable as Ohio State's. And while I think their players are good, again, not Ohio State. I'm picking 35-20 Notre Dame wins.
Ed, what do you think?
I'm gonna go back over 40, actually, and I'm gonna say Notre Dame 45-20.
Oh, it's interesting. I'm 45-17. I think they're going to get over 40 again too. It could be that they pull away late too.
Yeah.
It might be like 24-17 and a half or 24-10 and a half. But I think they're going to pound them in the second half. I think they're going to separate themselves just by controlling the football, running it. I think it's going to be really hard. Duke's going to have to start to gamble. And then, like you say, you get that missed tackle and there's 10 on the line and Estime's gone. So I think there's going to be some scores that we're going to put up because of the pressure that we apply on them in the second half.
The thing that kind of scares me, which is I think has bigger implications, that if Notre Dame loses, or if they're if
Sloppy
they
in the
lose,
win.
well, yeah, I mean, I think, I think that will mean that they were out coached, because I don't think that Duke's Duke's talent can hang with Notre Dame, but if they can, Elko's sharp.
I think he's a good coach. I mean, he's going to try a few things. There's no doubt about it.
They've got a mobile
Yeah.
quarterback.
Yeah.
And they could
You're going to see some wrinkles for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be another game where Golden's going to have to adjust on the fly, and Parker's going to have to sort of kind of understand the flow of the game and recognize some looks and communicate them to Hartman, because it's going to be tricky, real tricky.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
At least for a while.
It'll be nerve-wracking for us in those first two quarters, that's for sure. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm sure my dogs aren't either. Oh man. All right, good.
We in the last 4 minutes, the Cubs have gone from up 6-0 to up 6-5. And literally this guy has thrown 4 wild pitches out of his last 5 pitches for the Cubs. And he's about to throw in another one to let in the tying run. I mean, what a freaking
unbelievable.
Yeah, their bullpen is just absolutely. I mean, they swept. They had a good week.
Yeah, no, they've been playing well the last 4 games. But
why are you saying this as if it's a bad thing? I'm perplexed. There's my White Sox hats around here somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, you've got no other choice than to root against the Cubs.
That gives me something to do.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Ed Jordanek, Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Brammer. Thanks for listening.